If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It would really help the channel, and we have battle reports, boarding actions, and list videos every week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. This video is going to be giving 5 units that I consider top units for each detachment. I will include both a mix of Custodes Codex units and Forge World units. I will go over the detachments quickly, giving some of my favorite stratagems to use with these units. These will be subject to change over the edition. If there's enough changes, I will revisit this list in the future. I also have a auto-include list, so I'm not always putting these same units in every list. I wanted a little bit of variation in these top units for each detachment. And let's quickly go over the Adeptus Custodes army rule. The martial kata, each time a unit from your army is selected to fight, if you have that martial kata ability, you can pick either sustained hits on your melee weapons or lethal hits on your melee weapons. First, let's go over these auto-include units that I did mention. You can use these units in any of these detachments. We have the Wardens with a Blade Champion. You can attach a different leader to the Wardens, but the Blade Champion, as of writing this, is the most utility and threat to the Wardens unit. You get that advance in charge, you have that devastating AP3 damage 3 wounds profile of the Blade Champion. The Wardens need a leader attached to gain that -1 to the wound roll ability. This is the toughest unit we have. Nothing else really compares to these Wardens. This is what makes them so common in Custodes list. The next auto-include is Draxus with 4 or 5 Custodian Guard. The best and only real option for major anti-infantry mortal wounds, and there's a lot of synergy between these two data sheets. You can have that reroll wounds if you're on objectives, so your Draxus will get to reroll all of her wounds, and then you can have the shoot twice ability. Use that when you're on objective you control, and you can just pump out a lot of anti-infantry mortal wounds with this unit. Last, and sadly, is the Caladius Grav Tank. It wouldn't be sad if this thing wasn't so expensive, but it's very expensive to get a hold of with our real life dollars. You can find some 3D proxies. I really hope they make this thing in plastic sometime. This is the best and most reliable ranged anti-tank shooting we have access to. With so many vehicles and tough units in enemy lists, these are near auto-include in any competitive Custodes list. If you've been around on the channel for a while, you know I like to run all Custodes infantry lists once in a while, and I used to run those all the time, but right now, you just seem to need these tanks just to give that ranged anti-tank threat. If not, we get bullied off the board by a bunch of shooting units. So those are the auto-include units. You're usually always going to see a combination, if not all of these, in lists these days for competitive. In casual games, you don't need to bring all of these, but a combination of 1 or 2 of these units really does help a list and helps make a game a little more fun and not feel like you're just being shot off the board or chopped off the board. Now let's move on to the top units for each of these detachments. I mentioned Auric Champions, so we'll start with Auric Champions first. We'll go over the detachment real quickly, and then a few of my favorite stratagems. At the start of the command phase, you select one enemy unit, and until the start of your next command phase, each time a model in a Custodes character unit from your army makes an attack, +1 to the wound roll. And that +1 to the wound roll is what makes some of these units a little more viable in the Auric Champions. My favorite enhancement for this detachment is Martial Philosopher. It is 30 points, but it gives you an all-game fallback, shoot and charge, and then a once per game, you can do that reactive 6-inch move. Very handy to have, and in my opinion, the best enhancement in this detachment. Stratagems, remember, they only work on our Custodes character units, so one of my favorite ones is Earning a Name. You can pick up to 2 Adeptus Custodes character models, and then when they make an attack into a monster or vehicle unit, you can reroll your hit and your wound roll, so you can really get some extra damage out of your characters. The other one is Emperor's Auspice, and this is a Feel No Pain ability. It is only your character models, remember, so this works better on a solo character. So let's start with the top 5. The first one is Trajan Valoris. Yes, he is not as good as he used to be pre-Codex, but he's still decent in the Auric Champions. With that +1 to wound from the detachment rule, you can have Trajan hitting like a truck, especially with that Earning a Name stratagem to get him re-rolling his hits and his wounds into vehicles or monsters. You pick sustained hits for your army roll and just hope you get a whole bunch of extra attacks. Crank out some +1 to wound attacks into some enemies. We can reset Moment Shackle once per game with the Superhuman Reserve stratagem, but you have to use this stratagem when you use Moment Shackle. Then you have to wait to the next phase before you could use Moment Shackle again. And you can only use this stratagem once per game. And it can be used as a solo rapid ingress threat or join a unit. Both work in this detachment. Next up is a shield captain in Alaris. His damage reduction ability for a phase can hold off an entire army if placed in the right place. If you put him in the right place, nothing can move past him. They have to kill him first before they can move past him, and he can really slow up an army. And once again, earning a name for that reroll of hits and wounds against monsters and vehicles is great on the shield captain as well. And like Trajan, this can be run as a solo unit and be quite effective in the Auric Champions detachment. Then the last of the character units that you can viably run solo, a shield captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike. And this is a fantastic solo utility unit. It's fast, deadly into light infantry units. It does not need that detachment rule for the +1 to wound. As long as you're charging, it has lance, you'll have that +1 to wound from the lance ability. And we can use the strategic mastery ability on the shield captain to make Emperor's Auspice, that 4-up Feel No Pain, cost 0 CP once per battle round. So now we'll have him flying around with a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable, and a 4+ Feel No Pain. This can be very hard to kill, especially if you're using small arms fire. Very tough to kill. And like I said, this is the last of our units that can be used effectively as solo units. Yes, you can use the other shield captains in a Blade Champion, but I like the Blade Champion in a group of Wardens. This unit can get us lots of secondary points throughout a game, and they can hunt down those lone operatives and those other infantry units that have broken away from the main bulk of the enemy army. Next up is the Custodian Guard with the Melt-A-Spears with a Blade Champion, or a shield captain with the Melt-A-Spear and the shield. The Custodian Guard with the Pyrothite Spears still has that reroll the wound roll of 1, or reroll that whole wound roll if we're on objective we control. Combine that with the Assemblage of Might +1 to wound, you can actually get these Melt-A-Spears pretty scary in shooting. The unit does need a character attached to access that +1 to the wound roll from the detachment rule. The Blade Champion adds some speed with the advance and charge, and the Shield Captain gives us an additional Melt-A-Shot. This is my new favorite unit for the Auric Champions. It hits hard in the shooting and the fight phase. The Melt-A-Spear has the same melee profile as a Guardian Spear, so it's 5 attacks, strength 7, hitting on 2s, AP 2, damage 2. So you don't have to worry about losing any melee damage, so you can put out some pretty scary shooting damage and melee damage with this unit. Pretty scary into vehicles and monsters. You put that Assemblage of Might, so now you have these Melt-A-Spears with +1 to wound, and then you can charge them if you need to as well, and once again you would have that +1 to the wound roll in the fight phase. Last up is our Alaris Custodians with the Shield Captain and Alaris. This will give the already potent infantry horde killing range attacks of the Alaris +1 to the wound roll into the Assemblage of Might target. Especially if that horde or infantry unit has a character in it, will be re-rolling wound rolls with +1 to wound. These will be deadly. They re-roll the wound roll into most important targets with that Slayer of Tyrants ability. Character, monster, or vehicle units, we get to re-roll the wound roll. The Shield Captain will not need to use that stratagem to re-roll the hit and wound roll. You can use it to get to re-roll the hits. The Alaris Slayer of Tyrants ability will get this Shield Captain re-rolling the wound roll, which will allow us to free up the stratagem to use on Trajan or a Blade Champion. And that's the top 5 Auric Champions. Let's move on to the Null, Maiden, Vigil. The detachment rule is Creeping Dread, and the battle shock step of the opponent's army. If any unit below starting strength is within 12 inches of a Psychonic unit, that enemy unit must take a battle shock test. If below half strength, -1 to the battle shock roll. I know we've been lazy here with the Null, Maiden, Vigil, as it does not seem like there's a lot of interest there, and I don't have a lot of interest in myself, to be honest. I will get a list made up, and I will get some of these slides made up, so I don't have any of the stratagems ready. I did look through a few of them to see what they were, but most of them revolve around the Psychonic units, battle shock and stuff, and it just doesn't seem that strong. I will make a list. I will make a few videos on it. First in our top 5 units is Alea with 10 Vigilators. Alea is the only way to get fights first in the Codex. The Vigilators hit quite hard with 2 attacks, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2. This is the hardest hitting and most dangerous unit the Sisters of Silence have access to. Next up is Witch Seekers. They have that 6-inch scout ability, great for getting some early board control. We can put them inside a Psychonic Rhino to give that Rhino a 6-inch scout. They have an ability to cause a battle shock roll to one enemy unit hit with their torrent weapons, which will help some of these battle shock focused stratagems. Next up is that Psychonic Rhino. They are a must to keep our squishy sister units alive. It adds a lot of speed to the list as well. There is not a lot of stratagem support even for the Psychonic unit. We could use Witch Hunters for 1 CP to get lethal or sustained hits on the Rhino's ranged weapons, but we also have to target a Psyker unit to even use this stratagem though. And that's the problem with this detachment. There's just so many stipulations to use these stratagems, and they're nothing special. Lethal hits or sustained hits, you can get that in Shield Host with Archaeotech munitions. And you don't have to do any special things for that. You just use it and shoot away. Next up is Venatari. This is a great choice since it does not need stratagem support. It has amazing datasheet, it has a free rapid ingress ability, and fallback shoot and charge all game. The lance ability on the melee weapons to get +1 to the wound roll if the unit charged this turn, so you don't need to use stratagems to up the damage of this unit, you just need to charge stuff to get that +1 to wound. The Venatari are very fast. They have a movement of 10 inches, fly, and infantry, so that means they can fly over enemy units if they need to, and they can go through ruins since they are the infantry, so they're very fast, very versatile, a great unit. Last up is my favorite, the Adeptus Custodians. Another unit that has such an amazing datasheet, it can deal with the no stratagem or detachment support. And this gives the list a very hard-hitting melee unit that is much harder to kill than any of these Psychona infantry we have access to. Golden Light for that redeploy, and Slayer of Tyrants to reroll a wound roll against character, vehicle, and monster units. This is truly one of my favorite units and a great unit in a Null Maiden Vigil list. And that's the Null Maiden Vigil. Let's move on to the Shield Host. For the Shield Host, let's take a look at the detachment rule. Martial Mastery. At the start of the battle round, you can pick either Adeptus Custodes with the Martial Kata ability, melee weapons have critical hits on 5s, or you could pick Adeptus Custodes models with that Martial Kata ability, +1 to the AP of their melee weapons. My favorite enhancement for this detachment is Panopta Specs. It's simple, it's only 5 points. While the bearer is leading a unit, ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit have the Ignores Cover ability. And I like to put this on an Alar Shield Captain. Some of the better stratagems, Arcane Genetic Alchemy for 1 CP. Once mortal wounds have been allocated, you can use these for a 4 Field of Pain against those mortal wounds. And this is any phase, and you can use it against Doombolt. Then we have Multi-Potentiality for a fallback shoot and charge stratagem, great for any melee army. Then one of my sleeper favorites is Vigilance Eternal for 1 CP. You have to use this with a Custodes battle line, and that will be our Custodian Guard. And this will allow us to sticky objectives if we control that objective. So it's a great one to allow us to push up the board without having to stand on objectives all game. Let's start our top 5 units. First one is a solo Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle. Being able to reduce the cost of a few good stratagems by 1 makes this a great utility unit. The detachment rule makes the Shield Captain a huge threat to light to medium infantry units. The speed is great for hunting down enemy lone-op units with our potent melee damage making sure they're dealt with. So you charge in, you're going to have 6 attacks. Most of the time you're going to have sustained hits 1 with crits on 5s and then +1 to the wound. You can really smash up some lone-op characters with this Shield Captain. Both of the Shield Captain's abilities, Strategic Mastery and Sweeping Advance, they can be used without leading a unit, so that is huge. And right now I would rather use this unit as a solo unit rather than join it with a unit of overpriced Virtus Praetors. On to the Venatari. Free rapid ingress with a fallback, shoot and charge ability all game. This will free up a lot of CP. We won't have to spend it on rapid ingress or multi-potentiality for fallback and charge, since it's already built into the datasheet. The detachment rule for crits on 5 combined with sustained hits 1 or lethal, and the lance ability for +1 to wound on the charge, this is a very deadly unit in the Shield Host detachment. And this is one of the best ambush units with the speed and damage potential in the Shield Host detachment. You can rapid ingress quite far away since they do have a movement of 10. They are infantry, so they can smash through ruins with fly. So these things are very fast. You can drop them safely behind line of sight to set up a nice charge in our next turn. Next up is the Custodian Guard, and they can sticky objectives with the Vigilance Eternal for 1 CP, being our only battle line in the Codex. We used to have Prosecutors, but now it's just the Custodian Guard, and you need to have battle line to use this stratagem. With reroll the wound roll of 1, or the wound roll if on objective we control, is great for the ranged and melee damage of this unit. These are still potent without a character attached, making them the cheapest overall non-Psychona Custodes 5-man unit we have access to. Next up is Valerian with the Wardens, and this guy is a beast against melee units. He can turn the tide against a very melee heavy army like the Orcs. His ability is -1 to the AP of incoming melee attacks. Melee weapons need to be AP3 to get us on our 4+ invulnerable save. You add in that he has an AP3 weapon, that could potentially become AP4 with a detachment rule. He is deadly in melee. And you combine all that with that tough as nails Wardens to make a very tough unit to shift in melee combat. And finally, as you see a running theme, I really like this unit, and especially with a shield captain in Alaris with 5 Alaris Custodians. I love this unit. Throw that Panopta Specs enhancement on the shield captain to get our AP1 shooting attacks ignoring cover. If I do use this unit, I prefer the 5 Alaris instead of the 6. The 6 is expensive, and it seems to be overkill with melee and shooting. Including the captain, we will have 12 spear shots, AP1, damage 2, then 6d6 with blast, ballistic grenade shots at AP1, damage 1. We can use as stratagem Archaeotech munitions to get sustained hits or lethal on our ranged attacks, so now you could have sustained hits 1 with all these shots, ignoring cover from that Panopta Specs enhancement. This melts infantry and shooting, and then pretty much anything else in melee. It's a great unit. It's just a bit pricey with all the Warden Spam needed to feel competitive these days. Hopefully the data slate, we do see some changes there so we don't have to have Wardens all the time. And that's our top 5 shield host units. Let's move on to Talons of the Emperor. Our final detachment, Talons of the Emperor. The detachment rule is revered companions. Psychona units from your army gain the following ability. Null Aegis is an aura. Any Adeptus Custodes within 6 inches of a Psychona unit will have a 5-up feel no pain against psychic attacks and mortal wounds. All other Adeptus Custodes from your army gain the following ability. Deadly Unity, once again an aura. Psychona units within 6 inches of this unit. Each time a model in that Psychona unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. And this is more for your Vigilators, because your Witch Seekers don't care about +1 to hit. One of my favorite enhancements for this detachment is Aegis Projector. Once per turn, and that's not per battle round, this is once per turn, so your turn and then your opponent's turn. The first time a saving throw has failed for the bearer's unit, change the damage characteristic of that attack to 0. So you can soak up quite a bit of damage with this. Your opponent will try to get you to fail with a 1 damage weapon, but sometimes they have nothing else to shoot at you with a higher damage weapon. Even if it is 1 damage every turn, that's quite a bit of damage you are soaking up over the course of the game. For some of my favorite stratagems, we have Emperor's Executioners. It is a bit expensive. What this does until the end of the phase, each time one of these units attack an enemy unit below starting strength, add 1 to the wound roll. So this is great on Wardens to get that extra bit of damage with them, since they don't have any kind of reroll their wound rolls. Hunt is 1 CP, simple, fall back, shoot and charge. Then finally, the best stratagem in the Codex, Talon Pincer. Hopefully we have an even better stratagem in the new detachment, but for now, this is our strongest stratagem. It's in the opponent's movement phase. When they end a normal, advance, or fallback move, you can do a reactive normal move up to 6 inches. It's great for getting away from charges. It's great for getting out of line of sight, move blocking. There's a lot of things you can do with this stratagem. Now for our top 5 units. The first one is Valerian with Wardens. For the same reason he's good in the shield host, it makes him great in the Talons of the Emperor. He's awful to fight in melee, so he's good to have against orcs, against world eaters. The Triple Blade Champions was used to win the World Championships, but this still is a great unit to use if you don't want to run the Triple Blade Champions. Emperor's Executioners for 2 CP can increase this unit's damage output, just because the Wardens don't have that reroll the wound roll, so you can get quite a bit of extra damage with that stratagem. And this is a fantastic unit to use Talon Pincer to charge block enemy units, because Valerian with the Wardens is very scary in melee, so you may even make the enemy decide not to charge into this unit. Next up is Shield Captain with the Wardens. So yes, sorry again, there's more Wardens, but it's more who you're joining with the Wardens. And with the Shield Captain, you can reduce the cost of these great stratagems by 1 with the Strategic Mastery ability. This is a good option if you're finding CP management a little more difficult for the Talons of the Emperor, so you may want to bring the Shield Captain as you get used to this detachment, just so you have a little more leeway with your CP. And I like to throw Aegis Projector on that Shield Captain Awards unit, just to make it a little extra hard to shift. It's a shame I couldn't put this on Valerian, because then he would be disgusting to try to take out in melee. Then we have the Witch Seekers. They have that 6-inch scout ability, great for secondary scoring and early board control, and they are our best unit for screening any first turn charges with that scout ability. Then we have our Psychona Rhino, and this Rhino is a Psychona unit, so it can spread that 6-inch 5-up feel no pain to mortals and psychic wounds with that bigger profile, and it's harder to take out, So you can actually have this out in line of sight a little bit and not have to worry about quite getting blown off the board right away. You still have to be careful, but it's a lot less squishy than some Witchseekers standing out there in the open. It's a tough, fast unit, and we can put those Witchseekers in the Rhino to give that Rhino the 6-inch scout. But it could only be the Witchseekers. If you throw anything else that doesn't have the scout ability, everything in the transport has to have the scout ability for that transport to get the scout. And the Rhino will have access to a lot of the good stratagems if they are within 6 inches of a non-Psychono unit, such as the Talon Pincer for the reactive move. And this one is more of an honorable mention, the Venerable Land Raider, and this is the only other Adeptus Custodes anti-tank damage that we do have. It does hit on a 2+, so you will have those 4 las cannons hitting on a 2+. We can even use 1 or 2 of these to taxi up our Warden units in hopes to save that 4 Funeral Pain for later turns. It's not a Caladius, but it's the best we have unless we want to start adding Knights. Then finally, we have Alea with the 10 Vigilators. Alea once again gives that unit fights first. We can use that Talon Pincer stratagem to reactive move her 6 inches to charge block people, or maybe some Wardens that you don't want to use a 4 Funeral Pain yet. Put these in front of them, and they may think twice about charging into these with the fights first. We do have a Shield of Honor stratagem, and we can be used to protect a Psychono unit from enemy ranged attacks. Keep this unit within 6 inches of a Warden unit for some fun plays with this. So it makes them have to attack the Warden's unit as long as they are an eligible target, so you can protect Alea with this stratagem. Great reason to bring a Rhino to taxi the squishy yet deadly unit around. And that's our Talons of the Emperor, top 5 units. That's all of them. Let's move on to some final thoughts. Now for some final thoughts. These are all my personal opinion. If you disagree, feel free to throw it in the comments. Let's get the discussion going. I try not to spam the same units. I wanted to show the variation for Custodes list building. Yes, the Codex Balance needs work. There's not a whole lot of units that are considered good in the Codex. I still wanted to show some of my top units that some of us may not have thought to use in some of these detachments. I want to try in the new year, and hopefully we do get a little bit of buff to this detachment. I do want to make an Auric Champions list work that feels competitive with some actual threat to win games. This month is going to be wild. There's going to be lots of content. We got all these different detachments dropping. I'm not going to cover every one, but I will cover the ones for the armies that I do have on the channel. And then the data slate is coming too, so there's going to be a lot of content. I hope you guys stick around for it. Subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, boarding actions, and other Warhammer 40K content. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by.